Recently, I have been conducting a lot of technical interviews where I am looking for software developers, and I have noticed that most of the candidates are kind of unaware of certain basic things that you should do in order to succeed in an interview. And that is why I wanted to make this video where I want to highlight, I think, 6 tips that you should definitely consider when you are giving any interview. And trust me when I say this, these are the tips that I have personally followed in my career in order to succeed in interviews. There are interviews that I have succeeded even when I failed to answer more than 50% of the technical questions, but I still was able to get the job because I did all the other things right. And that is what I want to highlight in this video. So my tip number 1 is to thoroughly understand the job description. Now, why is it important is because job description is a place where you can find not only information regarding the technical skills that the candidate needs to have, but you'll also find some additional information or keywords that are essential for this particular role. For example, let's take there is a job description for data analyst, okay? And you could find the required skills are, let's say, Power BI, Excel, Python, SQL, etc. But in addition to that, there could be some mention of certain keywords or certain features or qualities that the company is looking for in the candidate. For example, there could be a mention that they're looking for candidates who has leadership qualities or who is self-motivated or who is proactive or who can work well with the team or who is an individual contributor. There could also be mention about, let's say, someone who has some banking domain knowledge or someone who has priorly working experience of migration projects or someone who is a problem solver, etc., etc. Right? Now, these are certain features that the candidate needs to have. It is good to have, right? But these are all the keywords, right? So what you should basically do is, before you even attend the interview, thoroughly go through the job description, highlight these keywords, and then remember these keywords. Once you remember these keywords, during your interview, try to mention these keywords multiple times, right? And let it naturally flow. Now, don't mention these keywords again and again just for the sake of saying it, but mention it naturally again and again during the interview. Now, how this helps is the interviewer or the recruiter will be aware of these keywords because these are the features that they're looking for. And when you mention this naturally during your interview multiple times, it kind of gives a green signal to the interviewer that, okay, we are looking for these qualities and this candidate has been talking about these qualities multiple times, right? And this will make the interviewer think that, okay, this candidate looks to be a good match for this role, okay? And that is why it's important to completely understand the job description and highlight these keywords. My next tip is to keep your introduction relevant to the job. Now, what I mean by that is, generally in interviews, one of the first questions that you'll be asked is to introduce yourself in most cases. And the reason why the interviewer is asking you this question is mainly with two objectives. Number one is to basically understand if you have the relevant skills and relevant experience that is required for the current role. Secondly, it's also a good time for the recruiter or the interviewer to understand about your communication skills and how well are you able to explain yourself, etc. So when you're answering this question, when you're introducing yourself, make sure that you keep these two objectives in mind and introduce yourself such that it is relevant to the current job. Now, multiple times I have seen candidates, when I ask them to introduce yourself, they start speaking for 5 to 10 minutes and they start from their college time and from their first job and go until their last job. Trust me, no one is interested. There are also candidates, when I ask them this question, they quickly introduce themselves within 10, 20 or 30 seconds. And basically I have no idea about them or their experience, right? So ideally, you should not talk too much and you should not talk too less, right? Ideally, I would say 2 to 3 minutes of introduction would be ideal, but make sure this introduction is relevant to the job. You might have done a lot of different things in your career, but highlight the important things that you have done in your career which are relevant to the job. Talk about the skills that are relevant to the job. And this is a great place where you should remember my first tip, that is to kind of repeat the keywords multiple times. From the job description, whatever keywords you have found, try to repeat it multiple times naturally during this introduction. My next tip is to be honest with the interviewer. Now, let's say you are asked a question which you have no idea about, right? Now, the best thing that you can do in this scenario is to be honest with the interviewer. So basically you could answer saying that, sorry, I have not used this particular concept in my career, so I'll not be able to answer it. Okay, now it's a very acceptable answer. Okay, or let's say there is a concept or a problem that they have asked you, and you probably would have worked it long time ago, but you're not able to answer it now. So straight away just tell to the recruiter or the interviewer that, sorry, I am not able to recall this particular concept. I have used it long time ago, but I will need to brush up on this particular concept. But if it is required for the job, I can definitely brush up and use it in the job. Now, by giving this kind of an answer, you are first of all saving the time of the recruiter or the interviewer. You're not wasting their time. And secondly, it's a very acceptable answer because everyone knows, or every interviewer understands, that no one is going to know everything, right? Even if you are 25 years of experience, you would never have covered every single concept that is there in that particular industry, right? So if you do not know something, or if you have not worked on something, it is acceptable. They will ask you some other question, right? But if you start showing your acting skills and then start wasting the time of the interviewer, then it does not create a good impression with the interviewer. My next tip is, do not cheat during an interview. Now, most of the interviews these days are conducted online and they are video calls. And we have heard of so many cases where the candidate was caught cheating, right? Now, I'll give you a scenario. So it has happened to me a couple of times where I ask a question to the candidate and the candidate has no idea, or he's kind of like struggling to answer, right? For the first few seconds. And then there is a breakage. Okay, maybe the video gets disconnected, or there is a problem with the audio, or there is a problem with the internet, etc. So there is some disconnection that happens in the call, right? And then after a few seconds, maybe half a minute, the connection, everything gets sorted and the candidate is back online, and then he immediately knows, he or she knows the answer to that particular problem, right? Now, when this happens, as an interviewer, my first thought is, this candidate did not know the answer before the breakage, and after the breakage he immediately knows the answer, right? So what happened in that breakage? Did he take help from some of his friends nearby, or did he look at some other computer, etc., right? Now, this might be the case and this might not be the case, and as an interviewer, I do not have a basically I cannot 100% say whether the candidate cheated or not. But once you create this kind of suspicion in the interviewer's mind, then it's very difficult for you to succeed in that interview. Now, some of you might argue that internet disconnection or any kind of these outages are pretty common. It can happen, right? I'm not saying it should not happen. It might happen. What I'm saying is, you were struggling before the outage and immediately after that breakage, you know the answer, right? That kind of creates the suspicion. So what I'm basically saying is, do not create suspicion in the interviewer's mind. It can be this scenario, or it can also be a scenario where I ask you a question and you're looking elsewhere, right? You're looking elsewhere and then you're trying to find the answer. Then it's not a good image that you're creating with the interviewer. So do not cheat. If you do not know the answer, be honest about it, but do not create a suspicion in the interviewer's mind. My next tip is, you should always ask questions to the interviewer. Now, generally what happens is, during the end of the interviewer might give you an opportunity to ask any questions, right? Now, this is a great time where you should be asking some relevant questions, some questions related to the job, your role, or the company, or the project, etc., right? And once you ask the question, don't just listen to the answer and move on to the next question. Ideally, that would not be great. The best thing is, you ask a question, you get an answer, try to come up with a follow-up question. Okay, the reason is, it is great if you could convert this question answer round into kind of a small friendly discussion. Okay, now if you can do that, then you kind of create a friendly rapport with the interviewer, and once you do that, the interviewer is going to remember you even after the interview. Okay, and let's say even if you did not have a great interview, but if you could end the interview in a positive way, in a friendly way, then you still give yourself a very good chance to clear the interview. So always come up with some interesting questions to the interviewer. Finally, the last tip is, you should follow up with the interviewer. Now, generally what happens is, during the interview, you might be asked certain questions which you did not, or you were not able to answer. So after few hours after the interview is over, it is good to send a follow-up email to the interviewer saying that, "Hi, it was nice talking to you. I was not able to answer a couple of questions and I was able to find the answer to them after the interview. I have shared the answers down below, and I would really appreciate if you could let me know if these were the answers that you are looking for." Right now, if you could do these kind of follow up with the interviewer, it kind of will create a very positive image of you with the interviewer. Now, by doing this, you also tell to the interviewer that you are a kind of person who is willing to learn, right? And you are a kind of person who is eager to join this particular job, right? So if you can create this kind of an impression with the interviewer, you give yourself a very good chance to clear the interview. And trust me when I say this, it has happened with me. There was a candidate who did follow up and we really liked the way he did the follow up, and he is basically working with us. So if I have to sum up this whole video, I'll basically tell you that if you want to succeed in an interview, you basically need to create a positive impression with the interviewer. And all of the 6 tips that I mentioned in this video were aimed such that you could create a positive impression with the interviewer. I hope it was beneficial. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, and as always, I will see you soon in the next one. Bye.